This is The Immortal Secret with Alex and Ezri. So, I don't know if you've seen the movie Conclave, based on the novel about the selection of a new pope. But there's a wonderful moment in it where Cardinal Lawrence, played by Ralph Fiennes, says this. He said, "Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. If there was only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery, and therefore no need for faith. Let us pray that God will grant us a pope who doubts." Which I just love that quote. I mean, I think it really sums up the dilemma that many people face. And I wondered how it kind of resonates with your experience from writing The Immortal Secret.
Well, Ezri, when I saw that movie, that was the quote that really stuck out for me too. I thought as a writer, I thought, oh, that's so good. That's so good. And I really did think that it summed up nicely how, how really faith and doubt are really at the center of religion. When I think about what's happened, my main character really goes on a spiritual journey, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I always tell people when I'm summing up my book that, you know, Benjamin finds something within the frame of the immortal and it sets him off on a journey. And it really is a spiritual journey. And it's framed around doubt and it's framed around faith. Because if you look at, and not to give too much away of the story so that people want to read it, but when you look at the story, I mean, how many people, Benjamin is suffering from he has cancer, and when he gets out of the
Mhm.
hospital he finds out that his grandfather Josiah has disappeared. So his family tells him that his grandfather has disappeared, and they've sort of dispatched all the private detectives and anyone who can help out, and looked at the credit card receipts and all that, and they couldn't find him. There's no breadcrumbs. He's like, they've decided he's gone, right? So Benjamin has faith, right? Like, this is the most important person in his life. So he has faith that, and he goes off on this journey to all these beautiful places like Paris, Istanbul, Venice, the Sinai Desert.
Mhm.
And along the way, he meets these characters, and it does, some of them say that they know Josiah, and they're thinking, and Benjamin's thinking, okay, Josiah, I'm really close to him, but I don't know you. And so there's all this doubt along the way. Are these people telling me the truth? And almost every character is like that. And I put so much research into the characters because one of them, the main character, Anacletica, she is someone who, I was really, everyone sort of is at a different journey in faith, in their faith, right? And Anacletica is someone who's a desert mother, and I did research on the desert mothers, the desert fathers. And I just love the fact that when it comes to faith, she is all in, right? Like, her faith
Yeah,
does not waver, right? And she's someone
right.
who lived many, thousands of years, right? So
Mm.
I love that for Benjamin, because as he's meeting all these different very powerful women, he's having to figure out, is this real? Should I do what they say? What, maybe saying, why am I even on this journey? So it kind of in a way parallels the journey that we have with faith, right? It's like some days you have doubt, and then some days you're totally, I'm believing everything. And faith is kind of fascinating that way, and
It's absolutely central. In the book, there are many instances, again, without giving too much away,
yeah,
where that tension between faith and doubt is explored. And I don't know if this was deliberate on your part, but there's one moment where Benjamin and Josiah are watching the X-Files together, right? Do you remember that? Okay.
yes.
And I just suddenly thought, wow, that's all about believing, and the truth is out there, but
I
it's,
know,
it's all
exactly.
about faith and doubt. So I
Yeah,
kind of thought that absolutely is the central tension in the story. I mean, at one point, Anacletica says, faith is all that matters.
yes, yeah,
And then at another point, you've written about Benjamin that he is a doubter.
yeah,
So that,
exactly.
again, that absolutely sets up that tension, and it goes right throughout the book. And I
Yeah,
think what's great, and again, not wishing to give too much away, but it's a tension that will always continue. There is
Yeah.
never a single pat answer to these kinds of questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, like the different levels of faith, because one of the characters has gone through an incredibly traumatic experience and
Mm,
chooses to forgive
yeah.
the person, the people that, created this traumatic experience when she was a young child, right? So it's just, again, it's sort of that kind of journey of your faith. And then when you are a doubter like Benjamin and you meet somebody like this and they're like, wow, you've forgiven those people. Like it's
Mm,
kind of a huge epiphany for somebody like him because it's like, wow, I don't, I'm not even sure I have any faith, but yet you're like a Christian person and you believe in
mm.
forgiveness, right? So really
Yeah,
fast.
and that as I think we mentioned in a previous conversation, that is so difficult to have that level of I don't know, self-containment or whatever the word is to enable that type of forgiveness. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because, as Benjamin struggles, one of the what's quite ironic when you forgive is when you forgive someone, it's really is a gift that you give to yourself, right? Because you're
Mm,
holding
yeah,
in that anger and all that emotion, and when you let it out and say, I'm going to forgive this person, and it just shows how, again, these women that he's meeting are so different than him as well, right? So
mm,
different than him, but maybe people that women who are inspiring him as well.
yeah.
But how do you feel religion adds depth to any story, sort of gets people thinking, Ezri? How do you think, like as a theme?
There are a number of ways. I mean, the first one is that it helps you to understand a character's motivation. It's a way of helping the reader to or the listener to get inside the character because there are frameworks of beliefs and you can simply you say so and so was a member of this or that religious group. It gives some insight into their motivation. Now that often gets challenged, as we're saying, with
Yeah,
questions of doubt and so on. But it also provides a lot of opportunity for great background. There's as there is wonderfully done in The Immortal Secret, the architecture of the great churches and so on. That can be really significant part of the story, and rituals and special clothing and all those kinds of things can add a lot to the depth of the characters and the story that they're set in. But I think there's also a really important point, and it kind of does get a bit to the darker side of religion, and that is conflict. We're talking about tension between faith and doubt, but often religions, unfortunately, end up in conflict because there are different ways of expressing religious experience,
yeah,
if I can put it
yeah,
that way. And as I've mentioned many times, I like to try and take an anthropological view of these things,
yeah.
and to think about how people have made ethical codes work. It's often through an organized religious establishment of some kind that
Mhm.
through the faith and the belief that people have means that they will stick to this ethical code. There's a wonderful book by an anthropologist called Dominic Johnson. The book's called God is Watching You.
Yeah.
And he looks at the origins of, and again, no disrespect to believers of any variety, but he looks at the origins of the story that there is this all-knowing, all-seeing, supernatural being.
Yeah.
Why did we first tell that story? Well, way back when humans were starting to organize themselves into more stable societies, the chief or head of a tribe may not have had enough authority to impose the group's ethical code. Like,
Mhm.
it's not a good idea to kill your relatives,
Yeah.
and then somebody goes and does it anyway for various reasons.
Yeah.
So having this authority to call on, well, it's not going to be me that punishes you, but God will.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
added so much to the um, ability of groups to stick to their ethical codes that it may have evolved from that. But that's just an anthropological perspective. As I say, it doesn't necessarily, do away with the need for faith and the beliefs that people have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating. And I do love going through that history of, of faith, right? Going through the history. I mentioned the Desert Mothers and the Desert Fathers, and,
Mm,
there's paganism and, and there's some journeys in my book where, Anacletica is someone from ancient Egypt. So she was,
mm,
like worshiping the golden idols and then makes her journey too, right? So I love all of that. The history of faith as well is really
mm.
fast. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. I've just been reading a wonderful novel by a man called Gustav Meyrink, very interesting writer. We'll talk about him perhaps another
Yeah.
time. The novel's called The Angel of the West Window, and it's about John Dee. And Dee was an Elizabethan scientist, occultist. They were often
Yeah.
combined
Yeah.
in those days.
Yeah. Alchemist, I think,
And
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he sort of was somewhere between Catholicism and Protestant, emerging Protestant beliefs just after the Reformation. So it's just after Henry VIII. And people started kind of going back to Catholicism a bit. So there was a lot of this kind of uncertainty about where this new kind of approach to Christianity fitted in, and where there was a need to. And some of the characters he encounters, and it's all based on historical characters. There was Bishop Bonner of London, who was known as the Bloody Bishop because he did put a lot of people to the stake. But he,
Oh, charming man.
yeah, but he shifted. He started out really as a supporter of the Reformation, a supporter of Henry VIII, but then he went back to Catholicism,
Yeah.
whereas Dee started out as a Catholic and then got more interested in, and the dynamic that creates is really fascinating, because obviously, as I said, there is conflict there that at times was really terrible. Um,
Hmm.
but it also shows how you can negotiate, like you were saying, between pagan and Christian and so on. You
Yeah.
can negotiate between belief systems.
Yeah.
At least that's what I believe in my more optimistic moments.
Yeah. So I really, really, really love iconography, and
Right.
it's just so beautiful. And you see some of these churches, like particularly in Istanbul, that used to be Constantinople, and they have done the restoration where they can, because when the Ottomans conquered, all of the iconography was covered up, and so
Mm,
they've gone and you know, they've been able to find some of the iconography in the churches. So it's kind of sort of a half, the church has now become a little bit Christian and a little bit Muslim. It's just
mm,
fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
And so I've
I,
like that has kind of, I just, that kind of blows me away too. When you are, even from a historical perspective, you're finding like all this, this beautiful art underneath, as you
right.
go and paint kind of thing.
There's definitely a lesson for comms people in there, that the
Yeah.
importance of signs and symbols,
Yes,
and,
yes.
and who gets to control the signs and symbols.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's fundamental to all human communication, and obviously has a very big role in religious communication, if you like. From the, as you say, from the iconography to the texts to the rituals, the candles, the vestments and all the rest of
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's all communication in a way.
yeah, yeah. And it's fascinating because it's like working on all of your senses, right?
Yeah.
So, Ezra, I know that you have a fascinating story about your dad, and I wondered
Mm.
if you wanted to share it with us.
Sure. I mean, it gets to the heart of this question about God as a concept and religion as a practice. And sometimes they're not as hand in gloves as you might think. So I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, but my father was a bit of a sort of conflicted person, understandably, having been a refugee from Nazi Germany. The things that he'd seen and experienced and the fate of many members of his family left him with a great deal of doubt, despite the very deep love that he had for the traditions and the
Mm.
practices that he grew up with. So I was always aware of that, but then, and he was always reading. I mean, he was an academic and he owned thousands of books and was often reading three or four books at once. But towards the end of his life, I noticed that the pile of books was not being touched. And I asked him once, if you're not reading anything, what are you thinking about? He said, I'm working on the God problem. Um,
I
so I said
love
to him, I said, well, if you get anywhere with that, will you let me know? And
it.
unfortunately, he didn't let me know. He took that secret, as they say, to the grave.
Yes.
But and I think it's quite a beautiful sentiment, and I think it because God is a problem, with the best will in the world, whatever one's faith or lack of faith, it is a problem that is endlessly debated. So we need
Mhm.
to find ways of doing that constructively, if you like. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what my dad was trying to get at.
I love that story, and it's his life. You just like it blows you away, what people have experienced in life, and what our journey is. And just knowing, I know your dad through you, and we both lost our fathers, and I just think he was like such a fascinating man, sharing so much wisdom in this world, and considering like just the horrendous things that come out of that war, which
Yeah.
was unbelievable. But I have to tell you, Ezri, there's nothing I love better. I wish I could have talked to you, Dad. I would love to have talked. I'd love to talk about, let's have a chat about the God, the God,
The God problem.
the God problem. Um, but I love it when people, you get together with your friends and you start, like we start talking about, well, what do you think? What do you think happens when we pass on? Blah, blah, blah. We share stories. I really find
Mhm.
it really fascinating for your faith, like deepen your faith as well. And I love it when people from different faiths, right? Whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever, and you start to talk to your friends, and it's like, wow, that's so fascinating. What your faith, like what you believe, the
Mm.
beliefs of your faith, right? Like,
Mm. Mm.
and I love that because I think it's just fascinating. You just get to know your friends a little bit better because a lot of times we're not
Yeah.
talking about that sort of thing, right? And then you get
Yeah.
to the table, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, you're still talking about it. It's just, what we both think. So yeah, I really love it. So
Yeah. And as I said, when there is an opportunity to exchange ideas and make it a kind of a source of common experience rather than a source of conflict, it's so powerful, and it's so sad that it often ends up just being I'm right, you're wrong, and
mhm.
and let's have a fight, which is such a
Yeah.
waste of human energy, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so sad. But, as we're talking about religion here, and just to close up our conversation, I really think that you narrating all of this was truly the best person I could have chosen
Yeah.
because just, there's it's just you bringing people in. I think you're just with your voice, Ezra, and you have many fans. I have told you have so many fans. You've acquired so many
I'm
fans.
I'm still waiting for the fan mail.
I can pass it on. It's coming through me. I'm sure it's coming through
Okay.
you too. And I saw something on LinkedIn about I saw something on LinkedIn on your LinkedIn. But I definitely think that you had the perfect voice also to bring people deep into these beautiful scenes like in St. Mark's Basilica in Venice,
Mm,
the Sinai Desert. So I really
right.
thank you for that. But it's such a pleasure to chat about this, Ezra, and thank you so much. And so we will be back. Ezra and I are
We
coming
will.
back.
And maybe with a guest next
Yeah,
time. We'll see.
maybe with a guest,
Yeah.
or but again, we're just having a lot of fun, and we just hope everybody else loves it. So if you do, we'd love if you wanted to share a comment. We'd love it if you wanted to share a comment or just give us a like, whatever. But it would mean a lot to us. But we will be back. So thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you, Alex.
Nice to see you, Ezri.